Stand at the edge of any volcano. Look at its perfect cone shape, the layered walls, the geometric precision. Now picture a coal waste heap, a terrikon, as miners call it. The same shape, the same angles, the same impossibility. What if everything we call nature is actually machinery? What if the Grand Canyon isn't carved by water, but cut by tools? What if deserts aren't sand from erosion, but chemical waste from processing ore? What if we're not living on Earth? We're working on someone else's mine. I know a professional machinist, 40 years operating lathes and mills. He looked at ancient stone cutting once and said, "This is factory work. This is industrial precision. This cannot be done by hand." Perhaps he saw something the historians missed. When stone becomes impossible. The Tsar's bath sits in the Hermitage Museum. 48 tons of solid granite, carved from a single block. The walls curve with mathematical perfection, less than 1 millimeter variation across the entire surface. Official history claims craftsmen carved it over 7 years, using hand tools and abrasives. Maybe that's true. Or maybe we should ask, have you ever tried to sand granite? Modern diamond tools heat up and fail within minutes. Yet somehow, men with copper chisels created optical quality polish on 48 tons of the hardest stone on Earth. The Alexander Column stands in Palace Square. 600 tons. A single piece of granite shaped with something called entasis, a subtle curve that requires continuous mathematical adjustment during cutting. Except it's not actually one piece. It's 7 cylinders stacked perfectly, with joints so tight, no blade fits between them. What machine makes 7 perfect cylinders from granite? Walk to Peru. Ollantaytambo. Blocks weighing 40 to 120 tons fitted together like puzzle pieces. Irregular polygonal shapes, each block different, each edge matching its neighbor with gaps smaller than paper thickness. Modern engineers suggest perhaps these aren't carved stones. Perhaps they're geopolymer concrete, poured into molds, allowed to set against each other. But who had concrete technology 1,000 years ago? Or perhaps someone had it much earlier, and we simply forgot. The Marble Veil Mystery. In the Chapel of San Severo, Naples, a sculpture lies covered. Christ under the shroud. The veil appears transparent. You see the face beneath. The fabric drapes with impossible softness. Except both body and veil are single-piece marble. How do you carve transparency into stone? The official version speaks of genius and skill, but every modern sculptor who studies it reaches the same conclusion. The veil cannot be carved. It must be cast. Liquid stone poured over a physical cloth which burned away, leaving this impossible permanence. Maybe the ancients knew chemistry we've only rediscovered. Or maybe they knew chemistry we haven't rediscovered yet. Look at Crimean bridges. Ancient stone foundations remain. Modern stone construction crumbles beside them. We've regressed. Today we use concrete because we cannot match what came before. Every engineer admits this. Yet history insists human civilization progresses linearly forward. Perhaps history is lying. Perhaps we're not climbing up. We're climbing back up. The caves that aren't caves. Eskikerman. Çufut-Kale. Crimean cave cities carved into limestone cliffs. Thousands of rooms, chambers, passages. Tour guides call them ancient dwellings, defensive fortresses where people hid from invaders. Look closer. Every wall shows parallel grooves, saw marks. The chambers aren't rooms, they're mining galleries. The fortress is a quarry. Millions of cubic feet of limestone, extracted with mechanical precision. Incaman catacombs. 10 million cubic meters of cut stone. 10 million. Where did it go? What did they build with 10 million cubic meters of limestone? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps the stone itself was never the product. Perhaps they wanted what was inside the stone. Nature's scars. The Grand Canyon stretches 446 kilometers. Official science claims the Colorado River carved it over 6 million years. Yet the Colorado River is shallow, sometimes only 2 meters deep. The canyon walls tower over 1,600 meters high. What river carves downward 1,000 times deeper than its own flow? Maybe none. Maybe water didn't cut the Grand Canyon. Maybe something else did. Devil's Tower in Wyoming. A stone column rising 386 meters. Textbooks call it volcanic basalt. But look at the vertical columns. They're too uniform, too parallel. Basalt fractures irregularly when it cools. These columns look machined. They look cut. What if volcanic rock is actually industrial slag? Uluru in Australia. The world's largest monolith. Except, what if it's not a monolith at all? What if it's what's left? What if everything around it was removed, and Uluru is simply the piece that wasn't worth taking? The Lena Pillars in Siberia. 80 kilometers of stone towers rising along the river, perfectly terraced, each level cutting back like steps, like mining benches, like an open-pit quarry that follows seams of ore down through layers of rock. What if these aren't erosion patterns? What if they're excavation patterns? The Rainbow Mountains of China. Jiangye Dangxia, the Rainbow Mountains. Tourists walk on wooden boardwalks built above the surface. Officials say the boards protect the fragile rock from foot traffic. Perhaps, or perhaps the boards keep tourists from falling through toxic tailings. The colors are too bright, too vivid. Natural oxidation doesn't create neon bands of orange, yellow, red, green. Chemical processing does. Heavy metals do. Mine waste does. And these Rainbow Mountains, they sit in territory marked on 17th century maps as Tartaria. The same Tartaria that covered half of Asia. The same Tartaria that vanished from history books completely by 1850. Maybe those maps were wrong, or maybe the new maps are wrong. Maybe they erased something too large to hide, so they called it nature instead. Rivers that flow like machines. Watch a rotary excavator work. It spins. It digs a trench. The trench curves because the machine pivots on a central point. It creates a channel with one high bank and one low bank. Debris piles in specific patterns. Now look at the Ob River in Russia. One bank high, one bank low. Perfect curves. Islands in exact positions that would form if excavated material fell from a cutting tool. The Voronezh region has curved lakes that form loops with islands in the exact center. Not carved by meandering water over centuries. Cut in single passes by something circular. Something mechanical. Horseshoe Bend in Arizona. A perfect semicircle of river. Not almost perfect. Perfect. As if someone drew it with a compass. The George River in Australia. Terraces stepping down toward the water. Each terrace level. Each terrace uniform. Each terrace the exact width a machine would need to pivot, cut, reset, pivot, cut, reset. What if rivers aren't natural? What if they're industrial trenches? Transportation routes for moving processed ore from deep inland mines to coastal processing facilities. Look at a map. Every major river connects mining regions to oceans. Every major river system branches like veins, like a network, like infrastructure. Perhaps it is infrastructure. Perhaps it always was. Mining operations follow a pattern. Extract ore from the ground, crush it, process it chemically, separate valuable metals from worthless rock. What remains, the waste, must go somewhere. In modern mining, they pile it. These piles have a name: terrikons, waste heaps, slag mountains. They rise 200 to 300 meters high, perfect cones, geometrically precise slopes at the angle of repose, the natural maximum steepness loose material can maintain. Visit the Donbass region. Coal terrikons dot the landscape like punctuation marks. They smoke. They burn internally for decades. Sometimes they explode when underground fires reach pockets of methane. Cut one open, you'll find layers, strata of different materials dumped sequentially over time. Now look at Mount Vesuvius, the same cone, the same slope angle, the same layered internal structure. But Vesuvius isn't called a waste heap. It's called a volcano. Scientists say it erupted in 79 AD, destroying Pompeii with lava and ash. Perhaps. But where are the lava flows? Where is the solidified magma that should coat the mountain's flanks? The walls of Vesuvius's crater aren't fused glass and melted rock. They're loose, layered, crumbly material. Like waste. Like processed ore dumped from a conveyor. What if it never erupted? What if Pompeii was buried by a terrikon collapse? What if volcanic activity is simply old slag piles settling, burning, occasionally exploding? Maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe we should look at more volcanoes. The perfect cone, Kluchevskaya Sopka in Kamchatka, 4,850 meters tall, the highest volcano in Eurasia. The cone is so geometrically perfect, it looks computer-generated. Scientists call it active. They photograph plumes of smoke. Terrikons also smoke. Where are the lava flows? Kluchevskaya should be surrounded by frozen rivers of rock. Instead, the slopes are clean, steep, uniform, like something piled, not ejected. Mount Fuji, Japan's sacred mountain. 3,776 meters of perfect symmetry. Artists paint it. Poets worship it. Geologists classify it as an active stratovolcano that last erupted in 1707. Or perhaps Mount Fuji is the world's most beautiful waste dump. Perhaps Japan built its spiritual identity around an industrial remnant. The volcanoes of New Zealand, of Mexico, of Indonesia, all share the same impossible perfection. All rise at exactly the angle loose material naturally achieves. All lack the chaotic, irregular shapes true geological violence creates. Mali Semyachik in Kamchatka appears as three cones merged together. Not three separate eruption centers. Three terrikons built so close they eventually touched. Tolbachik volcano has 120 slag cones surrounding it. 120. Official geology says these are parasitic vents. Perhaps. Or perhaps they're exactly what they look like. Waste piles from 120 separate extraction points. What if volcanic belts aren't geological features? What if they're industrial zones? Other mountains, other waste. The chocolate hills of the Philippines. 1,268 identical cone-shaped mounds spread across 50 square kilometers. All the same size, all the same shape, all covered in grass that turns brown in dry season, making them look like chocolate drops. Tourism boards call them a natural wonder. Geologists struggle to explain them. Theories include coral reef uplift, limestone weathering, submarine volcanism. None quite fit. What if they're simply 1,268 piles of processed material, dumped, abandoned, overgrown? The mountains around Pyatigorsk in southern Russia. Mashuk, Beshtau. Perfectly conical, suspiciously uniform. Located in a region that produced massive quantities of minerals during Tartarian times, according to old mining records. Perhaps coincidence. Perhaps not. The Rainbow Mountains return to our story. Janye Dangxia, those toxic bright layers. Official geology says they're sedimentary beds tilted by tectonic forces. But sedimentary rocks don't make neon colors. Chemical separation does. Different metals settle in different layers during ore processing. Copper makes green. Iron makes red. Sulfur makes yellow. What if the Rainbow Mountains are layered chemical waste? What if tourists are walking on the world's largest tailings pond, solidified over time? The desert question. Deserts cover 1/3 of Earth's land surface. Sahara, Gobi, Karakum, Arabian, Australian. Textbooks explain them with climate patterns and rain shadows. But sand, pure silica sand, doesn't form naturally in such quantities. Beach sand is broken shells and rock. Desert sand is different. It's nearly pure quartz, pure silicon dioxide. What produces pure silicon dioxide in mountain-sized quantities? Chemical ore processing. When you extract metals from rock, you dissolve everything in acid. Metals separate out. What remains? Silicon, quartz, sand. Perhaps deserts aren't climate features. Perhaps they're waste zones. Look at old maps again. 17th and 18th century cartography. The Gobi Desert sits in the heart of Tartaria. The Karakum Desert marks Tartarian territory. The Sahara sprawls across northern Africa, also labeled Tartaria on some period maps. Maybe those maps marked the mining zones. Maybe when Tartaria fell, the industrial sites were too obvious to hide, so they called them natural. They called them deserts. They said sand is normal. Rivers transported this sand waste. That's why river valleys are thick with sediment. That's why deltas spread kilometers into oceans. Not natural erosion. Industrial dumping. The waterways served as conveyor belts, moving processed waste from inland facilities to sea disposal. The scale is incomprehensible. But the evidence is incomprehensible too. No natural process creates the Sahara. No climate change transforms fertile land into pure silicon waste across 9 million square kilometers, unless it wasn't natural. Unless it was work. Two versions of truth. We must now choose between possibilities. Both are uncomfortable. Both change everything. Version 1. Tartaria was real. The maps don't lie. From 1500 to 1850, Tartaria covered most of Asia. Some maps show it controlling North America, Australia, parts of Africa. The largest nation on Earth. What if Tartaria possessed advanced technology? Industrial processes we've lost. Methods for cutting and moving stone that we cannot replicate. A global civilization that mined and processed resources on planetary scale. Old books mention Tartarian knowledge, strange metallurgy, crystal technology, free energy. Dismissed now as fantasy. But what if they knew something true? What if they built the quarries we now call canyons? What if they operated the processing plants we now call volcanoes? And what if someone erased them, destroyed their infrastructure, buried their cities, rewrote their history, declared their industrial sites to be natural wonders so no one would ask questions? Perhaps Tartaria became too powerful. Perhaps they discovered something they shouldn't. Perhaps they were eliminated as warning to others. Version 2. Earth is a mine. Maybe Tartaria doesn't matter. Maybe they were simply workers who realized the truth. We don't own this planet. We rent it. We maintain it. We serve it. What if Earth is a resource extraction site? What if humans are the maintenance crew? What if civilizations rise and fall, but the mining continues automatically? What if we're not here by accident? We're here by design, kept alive to operate systems we don't understand. Perhaps there are owners. Perhaps they visit occasionally. Perhaps they don't need to visit because the extraction is automated. Self-replicating machines launched millions of years ago. Terraforming, drilling, processing, dumping waste. And perhaps Tartaria figured this out. Perhaps they looked at the mountains and rivers and deserts and saw the truth. Perhaps they tried to shut it down. Perhaps that's why they're gone. The Mars warning. Look at Mars through a telescope. The red planet. Dead, barren, but covered in terrikons. Olympus Mons, 25 kilometers high, the largest volcano in the solar system, or the largest slag heap. Perfect cone, exact repose angle. Valles Marineris, 4,000 kilometers long, the grandest canyon anywhere, or the grandest quarry. Cut, processed, abandoned. Mars is red because iron oxide coats everything. Rust, the waste product of iron extraction. The entire planet is slag. Perhaps Mars was mined to exhaustion. Perhaps Earth is next. Perhaps we're living in the middle stages of planetary processing, mistaking industrial remnants for natural features because we cannot imagine the scale. Self-replicating machines don't care if we exist. They'll continue after we're gone. They'll finish the work. They'll move to the next planet, unless we stop them. But first, we must see them. The grinding mill. There's an old saying, God's mill grinds slowly, but it grinds exceedingly fine. Perhaps it's not a metaphor. Perhaps it's a description. The Earth machine processes everything, slowly, thoroughly. Mountains become sand. Sand becomes nothing. Eventually, only processed waste remains. We stand on top of someone else's machinery and call it home. Look at the world with new eyes. See the patterns, see the cuts, see the piles, see the channels. They're everywhere once you notice. Every mountain, every river, every desert, evidence of work. The question isn't whether this is true. The question is, what do you do with this knowledge? Do you forget? Do you dismiss? Do you mock? Or do you look closer? Do you question? Do you search? The truth is always nearby, hidden in plain sight, disguised as nature, waiting for someone to see. Want more investigations like this? Subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this with someone who questions everything, because they don't want you to know. But now you do. And once you see, you cannot unsee. The grinding continues. The truth remains. Your choice is simple. Worker or witness. Choose carefully.